Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode from Ampro Engineering. Here we have another installment of the Ampro Buyer's Guide. This particular car I think is quite unique. What we have here is a Nikko Turbo Ford Escort. This is from, well, the copyright on it says 1982. And I believe this is a Mark III Ford Escort, so that's probably pretty accurate in terms of when it was made. This was not sold in the US to my knowledge. A variant was, but not this particular model. This one here, as we can see, is fully proportional. The car's body, again, it's a Mark III Ford Escort. This is not the US variant, this is the European variant, which apparently was supposed to be the first Ford world car, but did not work out that way as Ford had intended, as the US variant and the European variant were quite different. As for the appearance of the car is injection molded in all white. We do have some tricolor decals, and we have some translucent blue Ford decals. The reason why I say translucent is you can see that it was placed over the yellow, the orange, and the white, and the emblem does in fact change color. However, at the rear, where it's just over the white, it looks quite good. There isn't very much detail in terms of cut lines, but you can very easily add them to the model if you'd like. It appears the car came with mirrors initially, though my particular model never had them in the kit. Taillights are detailed quite nicely, and the headlights are operational, and I'll show those in a little bit. The car is powered, I'm opening this up here, by 4 C batteries. Now these are just little adapters for AA's. It is powered by 4 C's, however, the radio gear inside of it is powered by 4 AA's. This means you can basically pull these batteries out. In fact, I'll just take that cell out. I can still power the car on, and it will work still. The suspension is very odd on this car. If I push down on the front, there's no movement. If I push down at the rear here, no movement. However, this particular rear wheel does have suspension. Now that comes into play also because, I apologize if the car is glitching right now. The car is quite glitchy indoors. In fact, I thought it was malfunctioning. When I take it outside, it's all but glitch free, so don't hold that against the car. Again, the car is from 1982, so we are talking 35 years of age at, considering this is 2017 right now. If the car is placed in high, I'm going to try and do this here. I'm going to hold this wheel. It is in fact one-wheel drive. If I place the car in low, the car is two-wheel drive. Normally I would say that a one-wheel drive RC car is idiotic, at least for something of this particular scale. However, due to the size of the car and the speed of the car in high gear, not to mention the fact that this car is intended to go on a smooth surface, I would say that the one-wheel drive is very adequate and not noticeable in the least. Since one of the highlights of this car is the digital proportional radio, let's kind of take a look at how this works. I mean, it's really not too bad. The servo centering, the car does have to have kind of its nose off the ground. You can see that it will center like that. So when the car is driving, you don't get that feeling of the car not centering itself. It's actually quite pleasant. Throttle response. And again, I apologize for the noise here. The throttle curve isn't the smoothest thing in the world. Now that also may have to do with the fact that, again, the car is very, very old. Although this example is not brand new, there's hardly any use on its undercarriage, and the body is practically mint. There are no scratches, no chips, no dents, no deformations, nothing. The body is like new. I had been looking for one of these for round about 4 years. This was the only one I had ever seen. In fact, it had been on eBay for round about a year, but it wasn't until I realized I wasn't going to find one that I did purchase it. Its condition is lovely. In fact, I also have the box. This is the box of the vehicle. It's not in horrible shape. It's not, obviously not beautiful, but it's not terrible. And we can see here that it is written in French. Let's go ahead and turn the box over. There is another one of these videos on YouTube with the silver one. I think the silver one is quite handsome as well. The white one there again. White one on the bottom. And I believe the white one at the rear here. And just going over some of the features of the car. Internally, that side as well, the car has a very nice little styrofoam package that will hold it in place, which I think is quite good for this, as this did travel across the world without any problems. The remote control does sit in here, and overall it's a pretty nice fit. There's two of these, one for each side of the car. There is one more feature I'd like to show off. As I accelerate, Nikko's often did have little features like this. There's an Audi that is a 1/16 scale as well that has a similar headlight characteristic. And I had also seen a 1/11th scale Audi that apparently had an opening trunk via remote. So that was kind of cool. You also had cars like the Sand Eagle that had the opening doors, and cars like the early Toyota Hilux 4-wheel drive that not only had headlights, but the headlights were operational via a button up here. Nikko seemed to enjoy these multiple channel vehicles. I am going to have a little bit of driving video on this car, but before we get down to that, I think it's a good idea to look at this car and see if you want one. Considering this car's rarity, they tend to be quite pricey. As I'd mentioned earlier, I've only ever seen one, and it's in this shape here, so it was quite nice. Considering that these were not sold in this guise in the United States, if you happen to be in the United States, you're looking to spend quite a lot for shipping. If you are in Europe, then shipping will not be your enemy. I don't know of their availability in the Asias, nor do I know of their availability in Australia, so it's kind of a unique little car. I don't really know much about it. In fact, there's very little information on it. Many of you might be looking at this and going, no, this thing was sold in the United States. And you're kind of right. The one on the right was sold in the United States. It was also sold in Europe. I know that there is a silver, maybe it's white and green. I think it's white and green. There's one that was sold in Italy that also had the siren on the roof over here. However, these two models differ in a few ways. First off, this car weighs 3 ounces. I swear this car weighs nothing. This car weighs 100 tons. When I received this car in the mail, I could not believe how light it was, because I had already owned this car and knew that this thing was very, very heavy. Cosmetically speaking, the cars are nearly identical, except this car does not have the molded mirrors, and these are kind of an aftermarket edition. I'm going to 3D print some for it. These are molded into the body. The US variant does have these lights that pop out on the top. It also has the European, at least the Italian variant, which I believe was done by Nikko, that had the same setup. The car's paint scheme was done in a Polizia version, so it did have a, I believe, set of green light bar on top, and as I am aware, had the same functionality as this one. This is not a proportional car. This car does have the high and low range. It also has a different suspension. We'll talk about this car later, but I did want to bring this up. These you can find readily, every 4 or 5 months you might find a couple on the US eBay, but we'll talk about this one later. As a collector, which I hesitate to call myself, I am more of someone that likes to play with these things as they are intended. My first complaint with this car is it is next to perfect, and it's not the kind of vehicle, like I want to take this thing for a walk, and I really don't want to add to the scratches on the belly. Secondly, sidewalks, maybe here in the United States, a little bit different, especially in California, but the sidewalks here are done in little kind of square segments. So the transition between one sidewalk and the next, or one panel and the next, usually has a little bit of a bump. And this car really just, it's not capable of handling such deformation on the ground. I mean, this car really needs a perfectly smooth asphalt, or a hardwood floor, or perfect concrete. It is not a car that can be driven on, anything but a manicured surface. Therefore, its playability is quite poor. If you are a collector, you want to put one of these on the shelf, this is a great car to get because, again, it's incredibly rare and incredibly attractive. I must admit that I was rather disappointed when I got this car. The proportionality of the, is that a word, proportionality? I've made up that word possibly. The proportional controls of this radio are quite good, but again, this is an old car. So I don't expect it to be perfect. The running video you'll see later, it's not horrible, but it's not what you would expect of a modern RC car. Again, this is a significantly older vehicle. In fact, let's take a look at the radio for a moment. So the radio fits in my hands quite nicely. This is a very common form factor for Nikko. You've seen these, I think, through the 90s on a lot of their vehicles. Anytime it's digital proportional, 2-channel, you'll see this radio. You can even see, if you have a golden arrow, that the Radio Shack remote and the Nikko remote are nearly identical. The innards on this are basically the innards on this one here. The car does run on a surprising number of batteries for the remote. There are 6 AA batteries. I am running NiCads in this particular one here, and your power switch is here. Your trim, again, quite nice, is on the radio, as opposed to a lot of these other lower end or toy grade cars where you'd find the trim down here. You do have a bit of a trim selection here, just it's just, in fact, it flat out says straightening right there. But otherwise, the underbelly is quite simple with the power switch, battery door clip, and high and low setting. And I think one of the neatest things is the exhaust tip is where you would put in the, you see that there? That is where you put the NiCad jack. Let's take a look at the car running. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That was the first time that I'd ever had this car out, and it was, I'm glad I did. I'm not used to the toy grade cars with proportional control, so that was very nice to experience. However, as you saw, this car really did not handle that terrain well at all. And granted, my driveway is quite poor. We're getting all that redone right now, but again, it's not a good car to drive. So if you are a collector and you want this in the box on your shelf, go for it. This is a great car. If you are someone like me that likes to drive their cars around a little bit, don't waste your money. This, I'm happy that I had the chance to own it, but I'm gonna sell it. To me, it's beautiful, but I have no attachment to it simply because I don't find the car very pleasurable to operate. I hope this was informational for you. Again, I've seen very little information on this car on YouTube, so I hope this added to a bit of your knowledge on vintage Nikkos. I'm a big fan of RC cars from the 1980s anyway, and we are looking at a very early car, even before the golden age of RC. Thank you so much for watching. I've got some additional reviews coming up, as well as some, in fact, I might as well show you real quick. Here's a little sneak preview. This is a complete dash panel for the Ford F-150 series Tamiya body, so the Blackfoot and the Ranger. It is a multiple part 3D print that includes a light pipe, so this thing will light up. This is coming up very, very soon. And we have also got Project Bandit here that has been stripped of its paints and any kind of dignity, as it seems. So we'll see this one very, very soon. Before we take off, please check out my Instagram and Facebook pages at Ampro Engineering for both. And in the closing credits, you will find a link to the band Blue Pinto, as well as my Shapeways page. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below, and I certainly hope I can answer them. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.